So again, my name is Rosie D. I'm the proud CEO of Chicago Cares. Chicago Cares is a nonprofit, and our mission is to mobilize volunteers to build a stronger, more unified Chicago. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up about 10 miles west of here. So to my Chicago people, I'm from out west. For my not Chicago people, I like to tell people that I grew up hood adjacent. Going back to my Chicago people, because we love our intersections, my intersection is Austin and Chicago Avenue. So, hey, yes, out west. West side, best side. So my mother was a social worker, so I was also raised by a social worker. My mother had a really strong belief in hard work. If you got time to lean, you got time to clean, right? And so my mom worked for the Illinois Department of Human Service for almost 30 years. That woman worked up until 2 weeks before she died, okay? So my mom had a work ethic like nobody else. So working at the Department of Human Service, my mom processed lots of food stamp applications, lots of cash assistance applications. On weekends, when she had to work, she would have me come with her and file these food stamp applications and these cash assistance applications. I learned how to read policy at a very early age because she wanted me to understand what people were going through, right? In my mom's office, she had a jar, a huge one of those like big jugs that water come in. She had one of those in her office, and over the year, right, you would notice that the jar would fill with coins. And so at the end of the year, she would cash all those coins in, and she would buy gifts for children and for parents who couldn't afford holiday gifts for their kids at the end of the year. So if you came into her office and you said, you know, Miss Whitehead, she didn't change her name either. I didn't change mine. This is also a legacy that I live. They would say, Miss Whitehead, I can't afford toys for my kids. And she would be like, no problem. And she would pull toys out. So commitment to community, love for community is in my veins. So it's weird, but it's not weird that I ended up in the civic engagement space or the volunteerism space, because that's in my bones, that's in my veins. And so when I started at Chicago Cares 15 years ago, I started as an entry-level coordinator. And so I coordinated seniors programming, lots of bingo nights. I know lots of people are like, oh, I like working with kids. That's not my ministry. I like working with older adults, right? I love getting in grown folks' business. I love it. I want to know why Miss Jones ain't talking to Miss Johnson. I want to know who's in 302. I love it. I love it. And that's why I like working with seniors, because they keep it real. Their filter is gone, and I cannot wait for my filter to be gone. And so the other thing I loved about working with seniors is I loved bingo night. I am the reigning bingo queen. I love it. I have called so many numbers. B11, chicken legs, I know 075, end of the line. I love it because I love watching community that is built when bingo is happening, right? I love that people come together and they check on each other. How your grandkids doing? Did you get your medicine? Are you getting on the bus this afternoon to go get grocery shopping? All that happened in bingo night all the time, and I loved it. And especially thinking about our aging population, right? We all know that if you are not isolated, you are more likely to live a longer and healthier life. So being around my elders and seeing them freak out over bingo was amazing to me. I loved it, right? And so I learned something, though, about service. And again, you guys know that I was raised by somebody who was deeply rooted in service. And so what I learned about service was that service needs to be community-driven. It needs to be rooted in community, right? So often the seniors that I worked with asked for bingo because they knew it was a fun activity that everyone could participate in, and they would see the majority of their neighbors and they would be able to build community, right? And so because they asked for it, they would come out for it, and I loved that. I also learned that volunteerism needs to be not isolated, right? It needs to be something that's done together, right? Again, to this idea of how do we create community. I also learned that it's not necessarily a charitable act, right? It's not about good-natured people, right? It's not about good-natured white people going to save the black and brown people, right? It's about how are we standing in solidarity with our neighbors, right? How are we saying, hey, I see something's going on with you. how can I help you? How can I put my hand on you and figure out that, you need some help, and what can we do together to get you what you need, right? And lastly, I learned that service can be transformational. It doesn't have to be transactional, right? I ask this question all the time about who's had a bad volunteer experience, and 9 times out of 10 people tell me it's an experience that felt disconnected and felt like busy work, right? And where people felt like they were a program supply. And what that tells me is that they didn't understand the point of their service. They weren't transformed by their service experience. When you have a good service experience, you feel transformed. You get more out of it than you give, right? That's how you know you had a really good experience. And so over the years at Chicago Cares, I tried to think about, what does it look like to shift volunteerism, to redefine what volunteerism looks like. And so then 2020 happened. And so before 2020, Chicago Cares had the largest day of service in the city of Chicago. We would get together 5,000 volunteers, and we would collect them all at Daley Plaza, and we'd be like, woohoo! And we'd put people on buses, and they'd go everywhere. And sometimes people are disorderly, so there was one year where there were people just standing in the streets, and I was like, why are y'all in the streets in Chicago? Get on the sidewalk, whatever, it was fine. But it was a big deal, and we built trust doing that, right? And so while we sunsetted that, and lots of people like to come to me and they'd be like, I know Chicago Cares. And I'm like, you know the Servathon. But yes, that was Chicago Cares. I love that for you. And so but what we did over the years in doing that largest day of service in the city is that we built trust. People knew what to expect from us. They knew they could come to Chicago Cares and have a quality service experience. And so I want to tell you the story of one of our partners. One of our partners was PepsiCo. PepsiCo had worked with us for over 20 years doing the Servathon. And so when 2020 hit, obviously it was a bad time to be in the thousands of people getting together, touching each other business, right? So PepsiCo was like, hey, we still want to do something, and we want to do something big. And so they came to us because they trusted us and they had a relationship with us. And so over the course of 2020, we worked with PepsiCo to design a big, massive project, something that would take 3 years and something that they said that they would invest $5 million over 3 years in Chicago neighborhoods, right? Chicago neighborhoods on the south and west side that have historically been taken from and strategically been disinvested in. Pepsi said, we want to do something and invest. So at first they were like, we're going to give away food because it's Pepsi. And we were like, is that what you want to do? Let's think about that. And they were like, well, we want to do something. I was like, well, how about we listen to community? How about we root this in community? How about we listen to people and believe that they are whole, creative, and resourceful and know what they need, right? And they were like, all right, girl. And so after having some of these meetings, it came to light that a lot of our community partners were like, hey, there's a gap in youth employment, right? Our young people need access to resources. Our young people don't have the same network that some other folks have. And so what does it look like for Pepsi to invest in the network of young people on the south and west side? And so what they designed was Pathways to Readiness Employment Program. And that is focused on young people on the south and west sides. It is a community-driven program, so those young people are getting stipends, they get their travel paid for, and they get to work at PepsiCo over the summer. They get to build their network. They get a mentor. That mentor is a volunteer who says, I'm going to step up and I'm going to support this young person, and I'll be a part of their network. And I'll make sure that when they're done with college, they have me and they can call on me to help them figure out what their next steps are. And I love that. I love that story so much because that's an example of what trust looks like in partnership. That looks like trust being built from a big corporation in our neighborhoods on the south and west side. That trust, that connection has been built, right? I love that because it is not charity, right? Like PepsiCo's interest was not charitable. They wanted access to talent. And they knew that there was talent on the south and west side that they just couldn't see. And so now because of this program, they have a beautiful pipeline of talent that they now have access to. And not just warehouse talent, marketing talent, social media talent. Our young people are brilliant in Chicago. Do you hear me? We are brilliant. Do you hear me? And now Pepsi has access to that talent, right? And not only that, it is transformational. It is not transformational just for the mentors, but also for the young people and for the communities that these young people get to go back to. And so that is how I think volunteerism can help us rebuild, and that is why I think volunteerism can be a beautiful antidote to this idea of rebuilding social trust. Thank you.